right. Welcome again to Bloomerang Academy, where today we are talking about how you can become a Bloomerang gift entry guru. Here is our agenda for today. Before we start, I would like to launch a poll as I talk about the agenda. What are you most interested to learn about today? So these are a couple of the things that we're going to be talking about. And please let me know what you're interested to learn more about. So in our gift entry and reporting foundations class, we talked about the transaction types you can enter into Bloomerang and how to store donation defaults to aid in gift entry, the default and custom fields you can track, using communications and report on. We learned the difference between fund, campaign, and appeal and what counts as raised or revenue, and the difference between the different fields you can use. We also learned to run reports based on transaction type, date, and acknowledgement status. Today, we are going to learn about other donation types, like your in-kind gifts, recurring gifts, event registrations. We'll also dig in deeper into soft credits, what they are and how they're used. We get a lot of questions around soft credits. So thank you for all your questions on this from our previous classes as well. I hope today's class sheds more light on soft credits in particular and these other topics. We'll also take a look at tribute gifts or gifts made in honor or in memory of someone. We'll also take a look at the different ways you can split a gift. Of course, it doesn't stop at gift entry, and we'll learn how you can report on these different types of gifts and what merge fields you can use when acknowledging these gifts. I'm going to take a quick peek at our poll. It looks like, no surprises here, about 54% of you here right now are really interested in soft credits. 44% are interested in recurring schedules and payments. 35% are interested in in-kind gifts. So those are our top three. Thank you for that. We'll definitely spend a lot of time on soft credits, recurring schedules, and in-kind gifts. I also wanted to remind everyone that we do have, while we're talking about recurring gifts here, as well as planned gifts, we have specific classes for those gifts too that you can check out. At the end, I'll show you a slide of resources and we'll link all of those classes there as well. Great, thank you so much. Lovely. All right, let's start with just a review of the different Bloomerang transaction types. So we have different transaction types, and you can see here, they're also categorized whether they're raised or revenue. So we have 6 different transaction types in Bloomerang. We have donations, pledges, pledge payments, recurring donation schedules, recurring donation payments, and soft credits. Each of these transaction types are also categorized whether they're raised or revenue. In Bloomerang, raised means these are dollars committed to your organization, whereas revenue, these are actual dollars received. So you'll see that the biggest difference between raised and revenue is whether or not you're counting the pledge or the pledge payment. This is especially important when you're reporting on gifts in Bloomerang. Amount fields, you'll notice, will total everything that it is being included in the filters. So whether you want just your raised amounts or revenue amounts, you need to tell the report what you want to see in there, or you need to tell the system what you want to see in the report. For today, we're going to be focusing on donations. We're not going to talk a lot about pledges and pledge payments because we have a whole separate class on pledges and pledge payments. We'll talk more about that on Thursday. If you are so inclined, you can register for that class as well. We do also have a class on, well, we have a whole series of classes on recurring giving, all the way from creating and tracking a recurring giving program to loving your recurring donors, keeping your recurring donors, as well as upgrading your recurring donors. For today, we'll talk a little bit about how to enter those schedules and how to enter the recurring payments. And of course, soft credits. We are definitely going to talk about soft credits today. So first, I want to start off with donations. And donations in Bloomerang encompass a few different types of gifts. including there's your one-time gifts and your recurring gifts. I separate the recurring payments and I separate the recurring payments and pledged payments over on the other side here. We'll see why as we get into the database and enter those. But for donations, you have your one-time donations, you have your event registrations. I know that event registrations may not technically be donations, but the way they are entered in Bloomerang, they come in as donations. You also have your in-kind gifts. Those also count as donations, or gifts of stock also count as donations. Some of these gifts you may be able to differentiate easily based on, for example, appeal, if you have a specific appeal for your event registration, or method. In-kind is one of the methods that you'll see in Bloomerang, and you can easily report on that. You also have note as a default field in all of your transactions. But for some gifts, you may want to create custom fields for them to track additional information. So let's go into Bloomerang and take a look at what the donation screen looks like and what I'm talking about. First, we're going to create a new constituent today that we're going to be working with. We're going to have Hercules Mulligan, just so we're starting off with a nice clean slate. So notice Hercules Mulligan doesn't have any donations or any activity yet in my Bloomerang database because we've just created him. So when you're entering any type of donation in Bloomerang, you'll likely start from this drop-down menu on the top right. So you'll see here where you see new donation, new pledge, new recurring donation, interaction, task, note, new relationship. We're not going to bother with those today, but this is what I mean by if you're trying to enter, for example, event registration, if you're trying to enter an in-kind gift, a gift of stock, you're most likely, or not most likely, you will be wanting to click this new donation. Everything falls under new donation. When you're creating a new pledge or creating a new recurring donation, you would create a new pledge or new recurring donation. However, once you've set those up and you're trying to enter payments for that pledge or a payment for that recurring donation, instead of creating a new pledge or new recurring donation, you would enter new donation instead. So this is what I'm saying where donation in Bloomerang encompasses a few different types of gifts. And you're most likely going to start off with entering a donation and differentiate from there. So just as a recap, if you're entering a one-time donation, you would enter your date, amount, fund. Those are your required fields, all in green. And you would have your your method. And this is where I'm also saying that in-kind gifts or donations, you just select a method of in-kind to differentiate that from your monetary gifts. So let's say we're going to enter a monetary donation, and I'm going to jump into the future here. And let's say Hercules Mulligan gave us $500 to the unrestricted fund. Campaign and appeal are not required, but if you have those details already, it's better if you enter in those details now. And you would select a method of cash, check, credit card, EFT, or in-kind. Let's just say he gave that to us in cash, and we're just going to click save. That's our one-time donation. If we wanted to enter an in-kind gift, we would still go to new donation. Typically, we want to leave the amount blank because we don't know what the amount is, or it is the donor's responsibility to declare an amount of the in-kind gift. Now, you'll notice fund is still required. So, we're going to enter a $0 amount into amount. We're going to enter unrestricted fund. And when we get to the method, we can select in-kind and we have additional fields that come up. We're seeing here that we have in-kind type. I can select whether this in-kind gift is a good or a service. What's the difference between a good or a service? Goods are typically physical items that you receive, and a service would be something that you typically would pay for, but someone is giving or a donor is giving as an in-kind gift. For example, legal services or accounting services, where you would normally pay for those services, but the donor is giving as a gift. So let's say for today, Hercules Mulligan gave us a couple of in-kind goods. You have the option here to enter a fair market value as well as a description. We recommend being as descriptive or as you can, as specific as you can with your description. And you can also add additional information into notes. Another good thing to remember when you're entering gifts into Bloomerang is all of these fields that we're entering, you can report on and you can use as merge fields. So think ahead to when you're sending a thank you letter to Hercules Mulligan. You can use these as merge fields and say things like, thank you for your in-kind gift of description. If you had a value, or if they provided an appraisal, valued at, that you gave on, date. So these are the ways that you can use those different merge fields. And you can add additional notes in there as well. So for example, if the in-kind description would be, since during his time, it would be, for example, I don't know, uniforms, maps, ammunition. You can write whatever it is you want in the in-kind description. And this is also where you can see why we recommend adding a $0 amount is because, one, when you report on gifts, and let's say you're just reporting on donations, you don't necessarily want the in-kind gifts or the value of the in-kind gifts counting toward your monetary donations and getting that confused with your monetary donations. You can report separately on the in-kind fair market value if the donor provided that amount, or let's say in terms of gift cards where you see the actual amount, you can put those in the in-kind fair market value. So let's say we're going to save that now. And you're still going to see that on his timeline as a donation. This is what I mean. It's still a donation. And when you go in there, it gives you a little bit more information that this is an in-kind donation. Now, let's say Hercules Mulligan also attended one of our events. So let's add a new donation. Again, there is no option to add a new registration, but we'll say new donation. Now, an important thing to do here is, how are you able to differentiate that this is an event registration versus a different kind of donation? You would utilize the different default fields that you have, and you may also rely on some of your custom fields to indicate to you that this is an event registration. So let's say we had a gala, it was $200, and the $200 came with a $25 dinner. So I would put that non-deductible amount in for the amount of that dinner in the non-deductible portion. For fund, let's say this was unrestricted, and this is where it falls in. I have a Mad Hatter Gala appeal in my database, so I know I can report on this donation, or I can report on this event registration, filtering for the appeal, knowing that I use this appeal for my gala, for my events. So you could use that. Let's say he paid by check, by cash. There are also additional fields that I've already set up in my database specifically for event registration. I can put in if there was a registration type, let's say it was individual, if he purchased one ticket, if he has any guests, if he has any dietary restrictions, if we were giving away a t-shirt as part of that event, we would track all of that information here. Now, these custom fields as well, you can add them to your event registration form. So let's say Hercules Mulligan was registering by event instead of us. We ran into each other and he told me he wanted to go to the event. You could add these custom fields as well. So you can report on registrations that came in via your form plus registrations that came in offline together in one report. So again, to recap that, there's a couple of things you can use to differentiate, or a couple of fields you can use to differentiate your registrations between your actual donations or monetary donations. If you have a non-deductible that goes with that event, go ahead and type that in. Create a specific appeal for the different events you may have so that you can report on that appeal. Also, create any additional fields that you need to track via custom fields. And so we're going to go ahead and save that. And again, when we go to his timeline here, everything is being brought in or being entered as a donation. But because you have those different fields, when you report on the gifts, you can easily report on, or you can easily find which are monetary donations, which are event registrations, which are in-kind gifts. So different fields I would use for this are, if it's an in-kind donation, I would use method as a differentiator there. So I can include transaction type donation, include or exclude method of in-kind, depending on what I want to see. If I only want to see revenue gifts, actual dollars received, I'm going to exclude method is in-kind. If I only want to see in-kind gifts, I would include method is in-kind. If I were looking at event registrations, I would still filter for the transaction type of donation, because that's what it says here, but I can use additional fields like appeal or ticket quantity to differentiate between looking for those event registrations. Another thing that we would enter would be would be gifts of stock. That's another thing that you don't find as a separate transaction type in Bloomerang. But our suggestion for gifts of stock, we're going to go ahead and start a new donation here, is one, to enter it with an amount of cash. With a method of cash, with the amount that it was sold for, if it was sold on the same day. We are basing this recommendation according to IRS publication 561. We will link that in the resources when we send that out to you. And the fair market value of the donation shares, or the donated shares, is the average price between the highest and the lowest quoted selling prices on the valuation date as the amount. So that's what you would receive the donor for, and that's what they would claim on their tax return. Now, if you want to reference the fact that the gift was of stock in your letter or email, what you could do is add a description of the gift to the note. For example, so let's say we received 99 shares of ABC Corporation, and we sold them today, and we know that the value of those 99 shares, for example, is $990. So we would add that. You could also, if you would like, so let me go ahead and finish entering these. So let's say that's unrestricted. Fill in those fields if you have them. So you can already, from filling out these fields, you can already you can already thank Hercules Mulligan by saying, thank you for your gift of 99 shares of ABC Corporation valued at $990. You could do that. Now, since there is no method of gift of stock, if you want to also track specifically that it is a gift of stock, you could create a custom field for like additional payment methods. So you can say, for example, you could have a field of additional payment type with stock being an extra value, or stock gift being an extra value that you can select, or you can even put stock gift yes or no as an additional payment type. So we're going to save this. I don't have that as a custom field in my database yet, but we're going to go ahead and save it. And if I wanted to add that as a custom field, I would go to my transaction custom fields. I do have some gift attributes in here that I can add. So maybe just to make it clear, I'm going to say that that's gift attribute. I can select new field here and have maybe payment type. This would be a text field, and it could be a type it in, it could be pick one value from a list. And you could add all the different gifts in here. So you could say this was a stock gift. So anytime you enter a stock gift, you would select this field, or you could go back to that gift from Hercules Mulligan and go back to our gift attributes and select stock as a payment type. A big advantage of doing this is you can easily report on these details. So you can report on all of your custom fields. So you would have a transaction report. You would have a transaction report. You would filter for payment type equals stock, or payment type is stock, and you would see a list of all of your stock gifts. Okay. I'm going to pause for a moment and see what questions we have. Are in-kind gifts raised or revenue? Great question. Because in-kind gifts are being brought in as donations, they are counted as both raised and revenue. And that's why we're entering them at $0 here. So we don't accidentally count the value of the in-kind gift in our raised or revenue. Should ACH be entered as EFT? Yes. So if you select a method of EFT, that's where you're going to get your additional fields for account type and routing number for your ACHs as well. Great question here. If it's a program fee, would we treat it the same as an event? The total amount would be the non-deductible. Great question. So if you have an event or a program where, let's say, the program costs $25 and the entire amount is non-deductible, you could put the same amount in your non-deductible as well. So when you insert a field for deductible, or you put that in your report, it will automatically calculate that. Great question. If the donor was not already in your database, you have to add him or her first, then add a donation on a separate screen. If the donor is already in your database, just go to their account and you can add the gift directly on their account. If they're not there yet, you would have to create them first. If you are importing, you can import transactions without creating the donor first. The system will recognize if the donor is already in the database based on the fields that you put, first name, last name, plus either email, address, or phone. So if they're not in the database yet, or the system doesn't find a match in the database, it will automatically create the constituent along with their donation. Great question. There's a question here on what about free events? For free events, what we typically recommend, since there is no transaction actually involved, is entering that as an interaction, noting that they registered for an event. Great question. All right. We are going to take a look at recurring gifts. So I'm going to exit out of here first and go back to our slides for a little bit. I wanted to take a look at what is the difference between a pledge and a recurring donation. This is also another question that we get fairly often. So before we take a look at recurring donations, let's take a look at what the difference is. Typically, a pledge, a total amount is committed, or you know the total amount that's being committed to your organization. For example, Hercules Mulligan might make a $5,000 pledge, and you know that you're going to get $5,000 versus a recurring donation is typically something that happens on a frequency. You're getting $5 a month. So it's the amount that you're recording is $5, not necessarily the full amount. For pledge, you have a time frame. Let's say Hercules Mulligan is pledging $5,000 to your organization that's going to be paid out either one time, or maybe he's going to pay out the $5,000 over the next 5 years at $1,000 each year. But there is a time frame when you know that the pledge will be fulfilled. Whereas recurring donations, it's more the frequency that you know of. Is this a monthly recurring gift? Is this quarterly? Is this yearly? Another big difference between the two is for pledges, this is typically fulfilled unless it's written off or they overpay on the pledge. It's typically fulfilled when the payments equal the pledge amount. So we are going to record, for example, a $5,000 pledge. This year, he makes a $1,000 payment. Next year, he makes another $1,000 payment. He keeps making payments until the pledge is fulfilled. For recurring donations, this is typically open-ended and continues until the donor requests to stop. So let's say a donor is giving $5 a month. At the point that they stop, let's say a couple of years from now, maybe their donations have totaled $500. Maybe their donations have totaled $1,000, maybe $5,000. It depends how long it keeps going. But typically, it keeps going until the donor is no longer or requests for the donation to stop. For pledges, the payment method typically varies. For larger amounts, you may be receiving a check. For smaller amounts, maybe they might give you their credit card and have it processed on schedule. For recurring donations, because it happens so frequently, typically these are auto processed. So if you have Bloomerang payments, for example, you can set up payments to auto process every month or according to whatever the schedule is, so that you don't necessarily have to remind the donors, or you don't necessarily have to enter cash or check payments every time they come in. Everything just happens automatically. Now, how do we go about entering a recurring donation? So we're entering a recurring donation on Hercules Mulligan's account, and we have that option here for new recurring donation. So a couple of things to note here. Again, for recurring donation, what is the amount? Let's say $10 a month going to the unrestricted campaign or unrestricted fund. And you have the option here for your auto payment method. If Hercules tells us he's going to send us a check every month, you can select an auto payment method of none. Or if he's willing to give us or if he wants to make things automated and have things processed automatically, maybe he'll give us his credit card, or maybe he'll give us his account number and routing number. Either way, he can select either of these options. For today, we're just going to say none. And then you need to fill out the schedule portion here on the right. It's going to ask you for the start date, the frequency, and if you have it, it's not required, the end date. So you can see, let's say the start date is the first time, if it's set to auto process, this is the first time that his card would be charged or his account would be debited. If this is set to auto payment method is none, then this would be when are you expected to receive the check every month. So let's say that's going to start sometime in the future. And the frequency, we'll keep it at monthly. We don't have an end date yet because Hercules just said, I'm going to give you $10 a month until we stop. And then we click save. So we'll see that it's going to create a recurring schedule on his timeline. Now, when you're entering payments for those recurring gifts or recurring donations, again, if you click on the top right, there isn't an option to enter a new recurring donation payment. If we try to select new recurring donation, it's like it starts over. So what you can do here is if he doesn't have as many things on his timeline or as many entries on his timeline, you can always click on the recurring schedule. This is also true for pledges. And you can click actions and there's an option to submit new payment. But let's say Hercules has a number of donations and has a number of transactions, interactions on his timeline. It's tricky to find where the recurring donation schedule is. You can also go up here to the dropdown, click new donation. And if he has any open recurring donations or pledges, the system is already going to show us here. And I can select that. And you can see here where I have the option to create a payment associated with that schedule. So we're going to click payment. It is not the feature yet. So the system is going to ask us, is this payment that he's making today going to apply to his scheduled payment, or is this an extra payment that he's making? This is especially important for if you're auto processing gifts, because even if I manually enter a payment, if you have it set to auto process, it's still going to process according to schedule. So you want to be cognizant of that when you're selecting if this is going to be applied to the next payment, in which case it's going to skip that payment because you already entered it, or if this is an extra payment, if it's auto processing, it will still charge according to schedule. So for today, let's just say Hercules wants that applied to his scheduled payment. We're going to click create. You can enter the date, and a lot of fields are going to be inherited. For example, your amount is already set because this is the monthly amount that he's giving. Your fund campaign appeal, if you've set that, are also going to be inherited. You can change that if you want, but by default, it's going to inherit. And let's say he gave that by cash. We're going to click cash. Let's pretend it is the future, or it is sometime in the future. And we'll click save. And then we'll start to see more entries populate on his timeline. We have a great question here. How do you deal with rejected credit cards or cards that become outdated? If you are using Bloomerang Payments, Bloomerang Payments actually comes with credit card updaters, and most credit card companies are enrolled into that program. So if Bloomerang Payments finds a new credit card for that donor with those same details, it is able to update the card so you won't have any interruptions to your auto processing. If there's any issues with your auto processing, we do have a payment failures dashboard here. So you can see here in my database, I have 21 credit card payment failures. So if you have any recurring payments that are set to auto process, if for whatever reason that payment doesn't go through, make sure you will get notified as soon as it happens. So you'll see here where I have that number on the bell icon. So it's going to show me what the it's going to show me if it's a pledge or a recurring donation. This applies to all credit card payment failures. I know it's a pledge because it's showing me the pledge balance. If not, it's a recurring donation. This response comes directly from the processor, so it could be as vague as card was declined to very specific as your card's expiration year is invalid, expiration month is invalid, invalid routing number, or perhaps it's an AVS decline, address verification decline. So it could be as vague as your card is declined to as specific as this. A couple of things I want to point out here is it will also tell you, you'll notice here this has next scheduled payment, and this one says retrying automatically. If any payment fails for whatever reason, Bloomerang is going to reprocess or try to reprocess the payment every other day within the next 7 days. So about 3 times in the next 7 days. Maybe there was just a glitch in the system. Maybe the internet was being slow for whatever reason. Maybe it just declined when we tried it. For the next 7 days, we're going to retry that payment in case it goes through. However, if it is beyond that 7-day waiting period or that 7-day retrying period, Bloomerang is still going to try every time the schedule comes up. And that's what it's saying here. So if you see a next scheduled payment, it's past that 7-day period, it's going to try again at the next time that it's scheduled to run. So it's important to catch these as soon as you see them. So as soon as you see that notification there that a payment failure may have, or that a payment may have failed to process, go ahead and check this and see what it is. And your actions may be different based on what you see here. If it's retrying automatically, I may wait until that retrying period to see if it reprocesses on its own, or if it already says the next schedule, or maybe based on the reason, if it's already expired, I'm going to want to call the donor right away. No matter how many times we retry, it's going to fail because it's already expired. So I'm going to want to call the donor right away. Another thing you want to pay attention to, you'll see this more for pledges rather than recurring donations, though, is if there's no scheduled payment. Maybe it was their last scheduled payment. There is no other date in the future to retry. You're going to want to call them right away. Great question. We have another great question here. Do you have to apply payments to all recurring, or can it just auto apply since it's recurring? If the recurring payment, or if the recurring schedule has an auto payment method of credit card or EFT, it will automatically apply those and automatically process those. But since Bloomerang does, if you're entering the payments manually, Bloomerang doesn't know if that's a one-time donation or a recurring payment. So you would have to associate that with the schedule every time. Another great question here, can we have payroll deduction added as a payment option? Our employees give their pledges or payments through their payroll. This is a great question. I'm going to pass this on to our product team as a suggestions as well as to how to handle these better. And that's going to depend a lot on how are you receiving those payroll gifts. Are you most of the time for payroll, what we see is that you receive one amount or one check, for example. Let's say Bloomerang, let's say a couple of Bloomerang employees had payroll deduction set up to give to your organization. Typically, you would have one transaction coming from Bloomerang for a total amount of all the different gifts from the different employees. And that's actually a great use case for our soft credits here in that case. But in terms of adding payroll deduction as a payment option, I would add that as a custom field. Again, maybe going back to your payment type here is adding a value there for payroll deduction so you can track that. Bloomerang isn't, unless, well, no, Bloomerang isn't set up to automatically deduct that from their payroll. So you still want to record the method in which it came to your organization. Great questions. Okay, let's talk about soft credits. A soft credit is a way to give a constituent monetary credit for another constituent's donation. So typically this is used for recognition purposes. A soft credit is not actual received funds and is not tax deductible. So use it to track fundraising efforts of your solicitors, board members, event participants, matching gifts, etc. Let's say, for example, Hercules Mulligan gave us a one-time donation of $500, let's say, to the unrestricted fund. And he gave because his friend Alexander Hamilton personally solicited him. Alexander told him, hey, this is a great organization. You should give to this organization, and he does. What we would want to do there to recognize Alexander's contributions for making this gift a reality is give him a soft credit. So you can soft credit any constituent that is already in your database. So if you want to give credit to someone and they're not in your database yet, you would want to create them as a constituent first, and then you can add them as a soft credit. So for example, in this case, we're going to look for Alexander Hamilton, select him, and it's going to check with you too as well. How much is that amount? In this case, it's the same amount. We're crediting him for the full amount. There's a separate acknowledgement field for the soft credit. So this is, for example, the acknowledgement field is when I send a thank you letter to Hercules Mulligan. The acknowledgement field is when I send a thank you letter to Alexander Hamilton. So we're going to add that, and that's going to be a soft credit. We're going to click Save. Now, when I look at Hercules Mulligan's timeline, I'm going to see the donation in there. I'm going to see that there's a soft credit. When I go to Alexander Hamilton's account, let's actually look at his timeline. You're going to see the soft credit there. And if I click on it, it actually also has a link to the original donation. So this way, for example, when I do my reports, I can tell the report to only show me donations. It's only going to show me Hercules Mulligan's donation. It's not going to show me, hey, you have $1,000, because I really don't. I'm just crediting Alexander Hamilton for bringing that gift in, even though it didn't come in from his pocket. Soft credits are also a good way or good use for donor advised funds or family charitable funds or foundations. So you want to enter the donation on the entity that wrote your organization the check. So let's see if I have, let's say we have the Holmes Family Foundation here. And we received a check from the Holmes Family Foundation for $500. We're going to enter our required fields. Let's say that's a check. You can enter in your additional check details if you want. But really, Sherlock Holmes gave through the foundation. So what we want to do is soft credit Sherlock Holmes for that amount. Because we received the check from the Holmes Family Foundation, the tax deductible letter that we're sending at the beginning of next year goes to the Holmes Family Foundation. Now, this doesn't mean we can't credit Sherlock Holmes or we can't thank Sherlock Holmes for the gift as well. This just means Sherlock is getting his tax receipts through the Family Foundation. So our tax receipts go to the Family Foundation and we enter the gift on the Holmes Family Foundation. We use the soft credit to keep track that that gift actually came from Sherlock. And this also allows us to send Sherlock a letter just to acknowledge we received your gift of X amount through the Holmes Family Foundation. It's always a nice touch point for him. So that's a great use for soft credits. Lots of questions on soft credits here. Yes. So this is how you would enter gifts from donor advised funds, charitable funds. Does the soft credit work for employee match donations too? Yes. So another scenario here is, let's say I gave your organization a gift. We're going to enter it on my account. Let's say I have a lot of test transactions on my account. Let's say I gave $500 to the unrestricted fund. Let's say I wrote a check. You can add the check details. And in the notes, I told you Bloomerang is going to match up to $200 of my gift. So I can add that. I can add as many details as I want. Bloomerang, my employer, for example, or whoever is matching the gift is going to match up to whatever amount. Maybe they're matching the full amount. Maybe they're matching a percentage. You want to take note of all that. So it's going to match up to $200. We would save this. No soft credit yet at this point. However, what we're going to want to do is, after we save this, we're going to go to Bloomerang's account. Now from here, you could go one of two ways. If you haven't received the check from Bloomerang yet, you could enter that as a pledge and soft credit me. Or maybe I gave you a check for $500, and at the same time I was like, here's also a check from Bloomerang that they match for $200. You could enter that straight up as a donation. In my case, I submit my batches to Bloomerang, and they match on a quarterly basis. So let's say we're going to enter it as a pledge. I know we have a separate class on pledges, but we really want to take a look at the soft credit here. So I told you that they were going to match it at $200. That's going to be to the unrestricted fund. They're going to send a check sometime next quarter, for example. I would add a soft credit here, and I would look for the employee. So $200, I would add that, because what we're essentially saying here is Bloomerang may not, without my original gift, Bloomerang would have nothing to match. So when Bloomerang's matching gift comes in, you want to soft credit the employee to give them credit for bringing in that donation to your organization. So in that case, because this is a pledge, let's just pick again some future date. It's going to be a one-time payment, and we would enter that and click save. Now, whenever you receive the check from Bloomerang, you could always go in there, add a payment, and it'll inherit the details of the pledge. I'm not going to do that now, but let's say you received the checks at the same time, same procedure. I would just add it as a new donation. Again, the big thing here being you soft credit the original donor, or the original donor from the gift that's being matched. We have a question here. Can you identify which letter the soft credit person gets? Yes, absolutely. What we would recommend for that is to create different types of letters. So you would already have your, let's say this is my weekly thank you letter, because my organization, we send those letters out weekly. This is my soft credit thank you letter. This is my pledge thank you letter. This is my recurring gift thank you letter. So when you are acknowledging soft credits, a big thing to note here is you want to be filtering for type is soft credit. Again, that type is very important. So if you were acknowledging the original donation, you're probably going to want donation. But for this one specifically, this is my letter for soft credits. And if we go into the design here, there are different fields, merge fields that you can add. If you're not familiar with our merge fields, I suggest going in here and just browsing through. But since I know what we're looking for example, there's a donor name. So I can say, for example, thank you for your gift. That came from, let's say this came from a donor advised fund. So thank you for your gift of amount. Through, let's say we entered the donation through the donor advised fund through the donor name on whatever date. Or perhaps in my case for the employee match or for the employer match, the amount of my gift, of my original gift, is different from the amount of my soft credited amount. Thank you for having your gift matched. We received, for example, original. You can reference their original transaction. Thank you for your gift of, let's say, thank you for your gift of, let's say, original transaction amount. Your employer, for example, Bloomerang, matched let's say matched amount, or match the soft credited amount, and you can talk about their impact, how their impact has doubled or tripled because of the match, and so on. Great question, thank you. What is the icon below the gear icon? That is, if you've purchased our online fundraising tools through Kindful Fundraising, that's where that takes you. Okay, I wanted to touch on our tribute gifts as well. So you can also enter tribute gifts into Bloomerang. So we're going to go back to Hercules Mulligan over here. And now tribute gifts are also donations, unless they could be pledges or recurring donations. Typically, they come in as donations. And the fields you want to pay attention to here are your tribute fields here. So let's say Hercules Mulligan gave $500 and it's going to be a tribute gift. So what you're going to want to do here is first you want to set up the tributes in Bloomerang in your settings section. Once the tribute is already selected or already created in Bloomerang, you can associate that with a gift. So we're going to click plus here. Do I have Alexander Hamilton here yet? No. Maybe he's just going to give, let's say, in memory of Tony Stark. So that gift is going to go in memory of Tony Stark, and we are going to save that gift. Now, when we go to tribute section, and again, you want to set up your tributes before you add or before you start adding gifts in memory of or in honor of someone, you'll go to your tributes. This is going to show you a list of all the different tributes I have in my database. When you're creating a new tribute, one of the things it's going to ask you is if this is in honor of or in memory of someone. In honor of for someone who is still living, in memory of for someone who is no longer with us. So let's say we are going to create one for Alexander Hamilton. We're going to set it as active, and notificants is which constituent in your database should be notified when gifts come in memory of this tribute. So let's say we want that to be Aaron Burr, for example. So again, that constituent must already exist in Bloomerang before you can add them as a notificant. So we can select that and then click Save. Once Alexander Hamilton is created as a tribute in my database, I can start adding gifts that show that the gift was made in honor of or in memory of Alexander Hamilton. Once gifts started coming in, you can also, let's go to Tony Stark here. It will show you the different gifts that come in honor of or in memory of that tribute. So you can see here, 2 gifts have come in memory of Tony Stark. And if you click on those gifts, it takes you directly to that account as well, or to that gift as well. There's a question here. Is there a way to enter tributes as a batch? When we batch enter them, they do not create an honoree name. We can only work with custom fields. Great question. Not right now. If you have our batch entry add-on for Google Sheets, you will have the ability there to create tributes or associated gifts with tributes in a batch. And you'll have that ability very soon. We are currently exploring how we can do that easily for everyone else. We had another question here on soft credits. Can there be more than one soft credit individual, one for donor and one for friend who brought donor to us? So the donor would just have the gift itself, and the friend who brought the donor to us would be soft credited. However, you can have, let's actually go back to the Holmes Foundation. You can associate more than one soft credit to a gift. So let's say you got a gift from the Holmes Family Foundation for $1,000. And that gift was made up of 2 gifts, one from Sherlock at $500 and another from Mycroft for another $500. You could do that. So if you receive one check, for example, we see this commonly with United Way, where you receive one check, but that check is composed of gifts from different individuals. You would write that donation again under the entity that wrote you the check for the total amount, and you can soft credit the individual gifts that make up that one gift. We have a question here. Do tributes count toward constituent count? They do not. So tributes here, these are counted separately, unless, for example, Peyton Manning, let's say, so we're tracking gifts here in honor of Peyton Manning. Maybe Peyton Manning is also a donor in my database. I would create a separate constituent account for the gifts that he gives. So that's separate from the gifts that we receive in honor of him. Great question. We have a question here. If I run a report of my donors, will the report line for Holmes Family Foundation show who is credited with a soft credit? You can. So we're going to go to our report list real quick. I'm thinking we might need a whole class just on soft credits. If you're interested in something like that, let us know in the Q&A or in the chat. So let's say we are filtering for type is donation. So we just want the donations. So this is only going to show us the donations. I'm not sure if I actually click save on the Holmes Family Foundation, but you can add additional columns for your soft credit fields. So you can see, for example, I can add soft credit name and soft credit amount. So it will show you who the gift, who was soft credited. In this case, we have Hercules Mulligan's gift of 500, and Alexander Hamilton was soft credited for 500 as well. You can even filter that down specifically to if the gift has a soft credit, so that you only get the gifts with a soft credit. So for example, here we entered Bloomerang's gift earlier of $200, and you can see that I was matched, or I was soft credited for $200 as well. You can see here we have those instances where more than one donor or more than one constituent is soft credited. It's going to show the original gift, as well as all the different constituents that were soft credited within that gift. Yes, I think I will. I think we will have a separate class just on soft credits. If you have suggestions like that, please send us your suggestions. Send us all the questions that you have on Tributes academy@bloomerang.com, and we'll be happy to put that together for you. Okay, well, we are just a tad bit over, but I hope that was helpful for you. Thank you so much for joining me today for our class on becoming a gift entry guru. We have a list of resources for you. We'll link this, or we'll include these slides when we send you the recording. And again, if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our support team. Chat and email support is free, and they can help you with any of the gifts that we showed you today. If you have suggestions for classes or for that soft credit class that we just talked about, send us an email, academy@bloomerang.com, so we can start building that out for you. Thank you again for joining me today. We hope to see you in another Academy class soon. Thursday, we're going to talk all about pledges. So if you have a lot of pledges or enter a lot of pledges in your database, check out that class on Thursday. We'll see you then. Have a great day. Bye.